Jay, it's March Madness. The tournament is here. How we doing?
We're doing great. I'm excited for this tournament. This is one of the more interesting ones I can remember before we started.
For sure. And obviously, we're both covering the sport all year long. How do you like to watch a tournament? You like to watch it with people around or at the comfort of your own home? Like, what's your go-to?
Well, I mean, if I could do it within the comfort of my own home, I would always do that. But I'll take the tournament any way I can get it, and it's always fun with other people. But I like to dial in on the games I'm interested in, and you're flipping back and forth sometimes. But I'm a one game at a time guy. I don't like to flip as much.
Interesting. I'm a multiple screens guy. I agree. Comfort of my own home. I want to be able to watch what I want to watch, but I need to be seeing even the 1 versus 16 Houston SIUE. I gotta watch it. I gotta watch a little bit of every game. I feel like so. All right, let's crack on to it. We got some fun topics today. We're gonna get right into the entire bracket. First thing we're gonna talk about is we're gonna go region by region. The lowest seed that we think could get out of that region possible. Not necessarily who we're picking in our brackets if we see, but if we see the chance for a 10 or an 11 seed or whatever to get out of that region. I want to know who you think. So let's start. I want to hear it from you. In the South region, Auburn's region, who's the lowest seed you think could possibly get out?
Ryan, every time I think about this and you think about, well, NC State did it as an 11, you have to have something happen in front of you. I mean, Oakland beat Kentucky that allowed them to kind of move on. And of course, NC State beat Marquette to start, but you have to have something extraordinary happen in your bracket for something like that to be achieved. When I look at the South bracket, to me, the lowest seed I see as a Final Four possibility is Texas A&M. I mean, I think that the Aggies can cause a lot of problems in that bracket. They don't shoot it great, but they're so disruptive defensively. They're so good on the offensive glass, and they can beat Michigan if they get to the second round. They've already beaten Auburn, and I think they would match up pretty favorably on the glass with Michigan State.
Yeah, and a lot of people are on the Yale upset, which I also get, but I agree Texas A&M has that ability to be explosive, especially if they're shooting the ball well, which they haven't consistently, but if they do. I wanted to say that I could see Marquette or New Mexico, the 7 or 10 getting out of there. I think this region is very oddly set up where something crazy is going to happen. But I would say, I think Louisville, the 8 seed, I think they're dangerous. They're playing in Lexington, obviously, which is great, and they're heavily underseeded. They should be a 5 or 6 seed. So you get that as an 8 seed again, and a 1 seed in Auburn, who obviously has had the highest peak of any team this year, really, and they're great. But Auburn has been shaky the last few weeks. I think Creighton is going to be a really tough matchup for Louisville with Ryan Kalkbrenner, but I think Louisville, the 8 seed, is the lowest seed. I would say has a possibility of getting out of this region into the Final Four.
That's a good call. It just depends on whether Rain Smith is available. If he were to be available, then I'm on that bandwagon. If not, I think that's a problem.
Yeah, I definitely agree. All right, let's go to the East region. In Duke's region, who do you got lowest seed possible to come out?
I like BYU as the 6. I think this is a really good draw for Duke, but BYU, as you know, can really shoot it, and they can get up and down the floor. If you let them out in transition, they can hit. They average close to 11 threes a game. So the VCU game is a difficult one for them because VCU forces a lot of turnovers, and they are good on the offensive glass. Wisconsin can slow the tempo a little bit on them, but Alabama, that's going to be, if Alabama gets that far, that's going to be an up and down game, and I think BYU can win that type of game because Alabama's not shown this year to be a great defensive team. They can be good at times, really good, but they've never been great. And Duke's still young, as talented as they are, and as good as they are defensively. They're still young, so I think BYU has a legitimate chance.
Yeah, I agree. 6 seed BYU. I think the first game is an incredibly tough matchup. It's a death matchup for BYU. They don't want to play against a team that runs you off the 3-point line and defends the three so well because that's what they do so well. But like you're saying, they get hot, things go well. I could definitely see BYU, the 6 seed, making a run, maybe even to the Final Four. It'll be tough, but we'll see. All right, let's go down to the Midwest region, Houston's region. Who's the lowest seed you think could come out?
Number 9, Gonzaga. I think that region has the chance. I think you mentioned the South could be crazy. I think that has the chance, the Midwest, to be the most chaotic because of some of the issues the teams have there, injuries and all that. Gonzaga starts out with a tough game against Georgia, and they'd have to play Houston. I mean, Houston can can bully them. But I do like Gonzaga's chances because they can score, and they've got arguably the best passing point guard in the NCAA tournament, Ryan Nemhard. So I think they're used to playing big shots. I give them a legitimate chance. Now, and 9 is a tough spot to reach the Final Four because you have to play the 1 in the second round. It's a really tough spot, but I give them a chance.
Yeah, I agree with you again. Gonzaga, I 100% agree. Gonzaga is the lowest seeded team I think could get out here. That Houston game is going to be crazy. I will be taking Houston or Gonzaga to go to the Final Four. Don't know which one yet. Still working on that. But I agree that Gonzaga is that lowest seed possible in that region. And then the last one, the West region, I call it the region of death. I mean, there are just ridiculously, unbelievably talented teams and good teams in this region. Who do you got as the lowest seed you think could get out?
Well, I would have taken St. John's to get to the Final Four in any other region, but they're in the region with Florida. So I think Texas Tech as the 3 seed is as low as I'm willing to go for the Final Four here. They got Drake. I think if Missouri, if Drake or Missouri gets through, and then they'd have to play St. John's down the line. But I kind of like Texas Tech as because they got JT Toppin, who's ridiculously athletic.
Yep.
Texas Tech is way better offensively this year than they've been. It's always been we've talked about their defense first, and they're good defensively, but they can score. And I like teams in this bracket that can score.
Yeah, I agree. I think Texas Tech is awesome. I think Maryland, the 4 seeded Terps, are the lowest possible seed to get out of that region possible. I think that they match up with Florida so well. Florida doesn't have, Todd Gold doesn't have great coaching experience. They don't have a lot of tourney experience, really, when you look at the team, especially from last year. They haven't won a tournament game. I think Maryland matches up very well. They're playing very well. They're built for March. I agree that it's going to be tough to beat Florida. I'll probably end up picking Florida, but I could 100% see the Terps getting out of that region and getting to the Final Four as a 4 seed.
Yeah, they got to get past Grand Canyon first. That's one of those upset games.
It's one to watch. GCU's got talk about tournament experience. GCU's got it. I'm more worried about the first game for Maryland than I am for their second game in the round of 32, 100%. But all right, we talked about some of the games. We talked about Houston, Gonzaga, tough ones to decide on. Is there one game specifically when you're looking at the bracket that you are just like throw everything in the air? You have no idea what to do. It's been the toughest game to decide on for you.
Yes, and it's one decision among 3 teams because of the first 4, and it's the Illinois winner of the Texas Xavier sort of play-in game.
Yeah,
I think either Texas or Xavier can beat Illinois. Illinois has been one of the Jekyll Hyde teams this year that they can get beat by 43 and then they can beat anybody on another day because they're really talented. They're young in spots at their key spots, but I think Xavier is very good. And I think Texas has been very good at times this year. And both those teams, I think, can beat Illinois. That's a really hard decision. And then Illinois could win the next game if they wind up beating either Texas or Xavier. It's one of those weird kind of Jekyll Hyde, what do I do here decisions.
Yeah, and you saw Illinois. I mean, Maryland beat them by like 30 or 40, it felt like last week. But then you see them score 105 against any opponent. Against a team like Kentucky, you can see the score kind of getting run up on both ends, and anybody can win a game like that. I've struggled with a few games for sure. Houston Gonzaga is a hypothetical second round game. That's the one that I've struggled with the most. Marquette, New Mexico is one that I struggle with a lot too because New Mexico I loved last year. I like them again this year. I love Donovan Dent. I know you do too. New Mexico feasts off turnovers and taking that the other way and turning that into points. But Marquette doesn't turn the ball over. But on the other side, you trust the players on New Mexico. Marquette's not been playing their best ball since probably November, December was the best point of their season. And New Mexico's also going to kill them on the boards with Nelly Jr., Joseph, and a couple of guys. So I struggle with that game a lot. But I do think both of them have a chance against Michigan State. So
I agree. But, the Midwest to me is like, I don't even know what to make of some of these games. Like, what about Kentucky's health? Purdue hasn't been playing its best basketball of late. I think Clemson can get beat, or they can wind up in the Elite Eight. Yeah. And that UCLA Utah State game, you're going, okay, in a lot of ways that's a coin flip. I think they play a 7-game series. UCLA walks away with it every time. But in a 1-game scenario, Utah State can win that game, and the whole bracket blows up based on these 3 or 4 teams.
It's really well said about that region. Like Clemson, McNeese, I love McNeese, love Will Wade, love what they're about. I don't think Clemson is the best matchup. They play a very similar style, just a notch better, and they have been all year. So I don't think that's ideal for McNeese. Your point about Purdue have been playing their worst ball this season. I think they're 3-6 in their last 9 games, and they've looked nothing like they did earlier in the year and what you know they can. And High Point's a team, it almost feels like the Furman-Virginia matchup from a few years ago, the 13-4, where you know you've got a really good 13 seed from a similar type of conference, SoCon versus Big South, and a struggling high major 4 seed where you're like, okay, I could, but everyone's talking about it and picking it, so it makes you kind of turned off from it too. The popular upset, but I could definitely see High Point, McNeese, Clemson, Purdue, any of those teams coming out of there. And we talked about Gonzaga also. So,
That's a good point about sort of the trendy upset pick, because people tend to forget the players on the higher seeded team have ears and they hear this
yeah.
all week. And I don't think it matters once the ball gets thrown up, but I do think it matters in their preparation.
And,
That
yeah.
they're feeling disrespected and we'll show you type of thing. The ones where the lower seeded team sneaks up on them, I think are the ones that are the better one. But at this time of year, we're all throwing out potential upsets. It doesn't mean we're picking it at our bracket, and that's sort of we get to sound smart if we throw out 8 upsets. And one of them comes true. We said, "Hey, we told you that was a potential upset." Well, duh. Like, are we taking it? That's
Exactly. I think Bryant can beat Michigan State, but I'm not going to take it. I'll tell you
right.
just in case it happens. Exactly. But all right, I want to go through the title contenders. Let's talk about the top. I'm going to name a team, and very simply, I want both of us to say yes or no. They can or cannot win the national title, and this is going to be a fun one because there's a lot of banter about who can win, who can't, and the top heavy and whatever. So let's start at the top with Auburn.
Yes.
I agree. Auburn definitely can. Duke.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. And even if you didn't believe that, I think you have to say it.
I don't know. If I didn't believe it, I would tell. I would say no right away.
Fair enough. I agree. Duke can definitely win. Houston.
Yes.
I agree. Florida.
Absolutely. Yes.
Saying Florida couldn't win would be just irresponsible in our jobs and what we do. That would be crazy. So I agree with you there. All right, let's get to the 2 seeds. Michigan State.
No. I think Michigan State's a Final Four team. I don't think they're a national championship team.
I very much agree. Don't think the offensive consistency and shooting and go-to guys are kind of going to get them to a national title. Alabama.
No. Final Four possibilities, but I don't see. I saw them earlier win a national championship, but not right now.
I also agree. I fear a little bit that they'll just go on a hot run like last year and they're even better and more experienced this year. But I think they've had too many defensive holes and gaps in their quality in general, and inconsistency to be able to say to be confident in them winning a national title this year. All right, number 2, Tennessee.
Barely no. 3 weeks ago, yes, but right now, no.
Yep, I agree. It's crazy. We're on the same page right now with the 2 seeds, but I definitely agree. Tennessee and Rick Barnes, they haven't gotten to a Final Four. I don't think they're winning a national title with the system they have set up. Number 2, St. John's.
I would have said no 3 weeks ago. I'm closer to a yes now, but because the ones are so strong and they're in the same bracket as Florida, I'd have to say no on that.
Yeah, I think so also. I think similar to Michigan State, the shooting and offensive capability, their offensive efficiency for a lot of reasons, and they're in a ridiculously tough region that is not going to help. All right, so we got 4 1 seeds, yes, 4 2 seeds, no. I'll give you the floor. Or is there anyone that you want to add, like an underdog title contender that you say, you know what? People aren't talking about this team as a 3, 4, 5, whatever. I think they should be in the title contender group with those 1 seeds.
There are 2 that I would say. One would be, even though they're in a ridiculously tough region, if something crazy happens to the top seed, I think Texas Tech is dangerous as a 3 seed. I'm not picking them to go to the Final Four because Florida's in their bracket, but I do think they're capable of beating St. John's. They played in so many tough games. And then the other would be, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but Arizona. I kind of like Arizona's draw. They played Duke earlier in the year. They've got that in their back pocket. They didn't play well. They didn't even reach 60 points in that game in McHale. And they do have a potential rematch of a Pac-12 thing with Oregon. But I kind of like Arizona. They got some big game players, and they have steadily improved over the course of the year. So that's a flyer, but Arizona's a possibility there.
Yeah, I don't hate that. And they've been playing definitely well in conference play and in the Big 12 and stuff like that. 100% agree on Texas Tech, and I think anything could happen in those regions. UConn or Oklahoma, you never know, could take down Florida, or Maryland could take down Florida, and then it opens the way for Texas Tech. It sounds like me and you both are going to have Florida over Texas Tech in the Elite Eight, which means neither of them are going to get there. Obviously, that's how it works. I agree, though, that Texas Tech is the dark horse national title contender, and I spoke on them before. I'm going to throw Maryland in there also because if they beat Florida, and I think they match up well, why can't they beat anybody else and go on the national title run? But it seems like me and you are on the same page. 4-1 seeds. We like Texas Tech. You said Arizona. I like Maryland a little bit. And then realistically, we see a 1 seed winning the national title, it sounds like.
I do, yeah. And the last time and the only time all four number one seeds made the Final Four was 2008. And in 2008, I picked all four number one seeds to get there because I look at the bracket and go, okay, look at the one seeds. What are their paths? And I liked all of their paths. And look, you can like a path and you're wrong. I mean, we don't know who's going to win these games. That's what makes it delicious.
Right.
But that was in San Antonio. And I like the paths of all four number one seeds here, and I feel similarly about their paths. And I actually think it could happen again. It's so unlikely just because of the nature of the tournament that would happen, but I think it could happen again.
I was filling out my bracket many times, obviously, looking at the bracket, trying to find where a 1 seed will lose, and I'm confident picking that, and I could not do it. I'm very with you, and that's interesting that it was in San Antonio, the last one. Obviously, it's in San Antonio again this year, which is super interesting and like a coincidence, you would think, unless it happens again, and then you're like, oh, yeah, something about San Antonio, but I agree. I think Auburn's been shaky their last few games, but I like their path a lot. We talk about how good a Duke has been and how good Florida has been. Houston has to play a team like Gonzaga and Clemson that'll be tough, but Houston's also been unbelievable. Like these 4 1 seeds are 1 seeds for a region. Or they're 1 seeds for a reason. There was no question who the 1 seeds were going to be for good reason on Selection Sunday. I agree that I don't think it's crazy that all 4 1 seeds go to the Final Four, and that almost feels like picking upsets if you take all 4 1 seeds because no one ever does that.
Yeah, and there's almost a push for people to pick upsets and to not all 4 seeds are going to make it. So you pick chalk. That's the easy thing to do. Of course, it's the easy thing to do. But the only thing I worry about with some of these teams is health. Is Houston going to be completely healthy? Is Juwan Roberts going to be back and completely healthy? Same thing for some of these other teams. Like some of them are banged up. Like Alabama's a 2 seed, but they're banged up. Like Grant Nelson didn't play in the second half of that game against Florida. He hasn't been practicing full bore of late. Is he going to be healthy? Things like that. And last year, Jamal Shed got hurt in the game against Duke. Now, it's just my opinion, but I think if he stays healthy throughout that game, Houston's in the Final Four, and we're not talking about NC State's Final Four.
I 100% agree with you. We can look back in hindsight all we want. But I definitely agree. And even teams like Iowa State's got Keyshawn Gilbert out. I would love to take Iowa State to the Final Four, even to win the national championship. I think they're that good. They've shown both of us. We were there in the building together that they are the quality of the best team in the country, and they competed with Auburn and Maui. Not having Keyshawn Gilbert obviously isn't ideal. One thing, we'll do a little fun thing before we wrap up. March is all about the moments, the crazy things, the buzzer beaters, the Cinderellas, everything. We're going to do a draft of the best March Madness moments ever. And we're going to stack it up and see kind of what we got. So do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay, I'll go first.
Fire away.
Leitner's shot against Kentucky in '92 in the Elite Eight. I was there. I was a graduate assistant coach on the Duke staff. And when the Duke team came back to the huddle, I think everybody was thinking about where were they going to spend spring break. And they left the huddle thinking they could win. And we ran that play earlier in the year against Wake Forest. And Grant Hill threw some banana ball that Christian Leitner stepped out of bounds with on the sideline. So you're kind of thinking, I don't know if we should run this play again. And it worked.
That's very incredibly interesting tidbit to know. I obviously, not being a GA on the staff, I would never have known a couple of those things, but that is incredible to know. Especially being the younger person myself, I got to go with Chris Jenkins' shot, Villanova to win the national championship. It doesn't get much better than that. Buzzer beaters to win the national title after the Marcus Page double clutch shot to tie the game is absolutely crazy. Unbelievable play draw from Arcidiacono and Chris Jenkins and Jay Wright. Like just awesome storybook writing.
Okay, I'm next. So I'll go Villanova over Georgetown, 1985. That was in Rupp Arena. I was a junior in college, and people may not remember Georgetown were the biggest, baddest dudes on the block. And I don't think anybody outside of Philadelphia thought that Georgetown was going to lose that game. And it was unbelievable the second half that Villanova had. Like it was just this exhilarating, are you kidding me type thing. I think that was actually that seemed bigger to me than NC State beating Houston. And I thought it couldn't get any bigger than that. It was remarkable.
It's funny you say that. That's gonna be my next pick. It's 1983, Jim Valvano, legend. Like I wasn't even alive, and I will never forget that. Like I know the clip so well. It looked like a half-court shot or a heave or a pass, and then the tip in on the buzzer to win the national championship. But that's a legendary one that I'll always remember, especially for Jimmy V. Shout out to Jimmy V. That's my second pick for sure.
All right, here's my next pick. Bird Magic, 1979. And it's not so much a buzzer beater or the game, it was the build up to the game. Because you had, Bird was at Indiana State, and this was back before the internet and before Sports Center and all this stuff. So they anticipate it's still, I think, the highest rated game in college basketball history. The game was on NBC, and now, while one shining moment, people talk about now, it's one shining moment. Back then, the intro music for that game was Kenny Loggins' "This Is It." That was the NBC song, and when you heard that, you're like, "This is going to be awesome," because back then, game of the week was literal. There was only one big game on a week, but the build up to that was unbelievable. Bryant Gumbel was the host of it. That's how long ago this was, and it was an awesome build up to that game. The game lived up to it. It's a great game, but I go Bird Magic, Michigan State, Indiana State, 1979.
Hard to argue against that. I'm going to go with a recent one in the bubble tournament. Jalen Suggs half-court buzzer beater versus UCLA. A little after Johnny Juzang gets the two to go, but I'll never forget the Jalen Suggs and the call. The ref was blowing his whistle like 6 times after the buzzer to make sure they're clearing it as Suggs jumps on the table to the virtual fans in the bubble tournament, which is unbelievable to me. But unbelievable shot. I'll never forget that one. It was crazy.
All right, my next one is 2010 in the final between Duke and Butler, and it's one moment. It's when Gordon Hayward, after the missed free throw, Brian Zubek purposefully missed a free throw on Coach K's instructions, and when Gordon Hayward let the ball go from half court, the feeling in the building, it seemed like it took forever, and you're going, that shot's on line. Like that could, you're like, that could go in. And it rimmed out, and it was the most like kind of interesting feeling in a basketball game that I'd ever experienced, because you're going, that would have been, I think that could have been the all-time Cinderella moment.
Yeah.
Of in Indianapolis, Butler right down the road, Brad Stevens, the little engine that could feeling that you had about Butler, even though they had multiple pros on that team. I'll never forget that feeling of just that ball being in the air and this could go in, and then the feeling when it didn't. You're going, my God, that moment, it was unreal.
It's crazy to look back and see like that's a true mid-major in doing that, and now look at where Butler kind of has gone and stuff like that. It's interesting, but yeah, I'm gonna go 2016 Texas A&M 12-point 30-second comeback versus Northern Iowa to get to the Sweet 16. I will never forget how ridiculous that was, because you and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. They're gonna win again and go to the Sweet 16. And then I think it was Daniel House and Alex Caruso's team at A&M, and I just like the turnovers, the mistakes, the shot making. I could not believe it. They got a little help from the refs, but yeah, we got last one for both of us. Go ahead.
My last one would be 2005 in the Elite Eight when Illinois played Arizona. I was lucky enough to be calling that game. That was back when ESPN used to trade me over to CBS for the tournament. And so I was calling the game with Dick Enberg. And game went to overtime. Arizona had Illinois beat. And the comeback that Illinois made behind Darren Williams, D. Brown, Luther had those guys, it was absurd. I mean, the feeling in that building, it was in the Rosemont Horizon. And I've never, like the sustained feeling in the building of just like sitting on pins and needles was
Yeah.
unbelievable. And I didn't care who won. I couldn't imagine if you cared who won, how that would feel. It was one of the best pure basketball games I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I was actually considering a couple of games like that for my last pick. Even the game like Creighton, Oregon last year, like one of the best games I've ever seen in my entire life. So I want to do that, but I'm going to keep it simple. A couple of years ago, buzzer beater in the Final Four doesn't get much better than that. Lamont Butler, I remember being there, sitting in line with his shot and being like, oh my God, it's perfect. He's hitting it. He's his little sidestep. I'll go Lamont Butler, San Diego State buzzer beater over FAU. That's going to wrap it up. I guess we'll let people tell us who they think had the better draft of March Madness moments. But this is about it for us. Any last thing? Who's your national title pick, real quick?
Florida. I mean, I've been watching Florida all year long. They've gotten better and better. And sitting courtside at the SEC tournament, you're like, there's not a hole on this team. Now, it doesn't mean they can't play poorly in a game. Everybody can get clipped in this thing. There's nobody that can't lose.
Yeah.
But it's absurd how good they are.
Yeah, I agree the same way. I have not seen a team since 2021 Baylor that had no gaps, no holes in their quality. The really only thing is that Todd Golden hasn't won a tournament game and they don't have that kind of experience. But I'm gonna push that aside because this team this year has been so good. They're playing their best ball right now. They got ridiculous depth and versatility in the front court that opens the game up for the back court. It's hard to go against the Gators. I'm rolling with them also.
It's going to be a great tournament. I mean, all these we're guaranteed upsets. We just don't know which ones we're going to get. And
Yep.
and I think this has a chance to be one of the best tournaments in the last 15, 20 years. I really do.
I agree, and we know we're not going to get UConn cleaning through everybody again like last year, which was cool back to back. But we know it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. I appreciate you taking the time. This has been fun as always. I hope you enjoy the tournament, and I'm sure we'll talk throughout it.
All right, brother. Looking forward to it.